Money, obviously. I mean, um, we need more resources in that regard. I've long advocated, that all drug treatment facilities outside of state prisons are voluntary. A person who's court-ordered one of these facilities can walk away at will. And the only remedy is notify the court, and of course the court can issue a warrant for their arrest and pick them up eventually and put them back in jail. But I've long advocated we need some kind of secure drug facility where they can't just walk away. But here again, that all gets back to money. So it's a matter of having the resources available to the court to utilize and tailor something for an individual, because every case is different, as you know. It all depends on the circumstances, the person, and those are issues that a court has to consider when looking at what they're going to do with someone in that situation.
Before we leave this segment, I want to quickly ask you, what is the difference between a state and a federal judge in terms of how they're elected and anything else that comes to mind?
Well, a federal judge has a lifetime appointment. That's probably the biggest difference, that once they're nominated and approved by Congress and appointed, they're there for life, barring some kind of criminal act or misconduct that would get them removed, which has happened from time to time. But state judges have to run every 6 years for election, so you got an element of politics in a state judge, even though judges attempt to reduce that as much as possible. The fact of life is you have to run for election every 6 years, and the way it's set up, you have to run under a party label of some sort. So you go either run as a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, although independents don't fare well in this state, so you have to pick a party to run under. So, which is really a terrible way to select judges based on party affiliation.
And of course, it's not that way in all states, but that's the way it is in Alabama.
That's the way it is in Alabama.
All right. So. Well, we will look forward to a final third segment. And again, so much appreciate you being here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Head to Carl Cannon. Their dream team makes it real easy to do business.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Carl Cannon Buick Cadillac GMC Chevrolet. My name is Joshua Salter, and would love to take this opportunity to show you the new 2016 Cadillac SRX. We've got some great promotions going on right now. Would love to help you get into a new car today. If you have any questions, please give us a call at 384-5561 or on my cell at 205-300-8364. Stop out and see us.
Other dealers can't? Cannon can.
Carl Cannon, Chevy Buick GMC Cadillac in Jasper.
Every day, students at Bevel State Community College tell their own stories. They tell them through the accomplishments they achieve, the choices they make for career success, and through recommendations they share with friends. With 5 locations serving 7 counties and tuition lower than four-year colleges, now is the time to start writing your own success story. Your story starts at Bevel State.
Welcome back. We're here with former Judge Tommy Nail, former judge in Jefferson County. And now we're going to talk about a couple topics in the criminal justice system. The first I want to discuss is bail. It seems like there's some common misconceptions around bail, or what's commonly known as bond, and who gets it, who's entitled to it. And oftentimes someone gets arrested for a high-profile crime, and people are upset when they get released from jail immediately. Tell us how that system works.
Well, there are a lot of misconceptions about bail. Under both the U.S. Constitution and the Alabama Constitution, a person has an absolute right to a bail, reasonable bail, unless it's a capital charge and the likely punishment will be death. So that's an absolute right. So, of course, bail is all over the place depending on the circumstances of the case, but the law requires that a bail be set in all non-capital offenses, so that's required by law.
So in cases in which there's someone's accused of violence or a sex crime, they're still entitled to a bail, is that right?
They are. Of course, there are 18 factors that a judge has to consider in setting what's called a reasonable bail. What's reasonable for one case may not be reasonable in another case. And violence is one factor that the court has to take into consider. The likelihood of reoffending is one of the factors. Whether violence was involved, whether a whole host of different factors the court has to consider.
All right. And it seems like that'd be some difficult, one of the more difficult things you have to do, or one of the difficult things you have to do is to decide how can you ensure that someone comes back to court?
Well, that's what bail's supposed to do, secure their appearance. It's not to punish them prior to conviction, since everyone comes in presumed to be not guilty. And that depends on the circumstances, very fact specific to the case, so you have to know a lot of information about the defendant. And that's one of the problems when we get back to resources. The court doesn't have the resources to really investigate the background of the defendant with the volume of cases we deal with. So we're pretty much limited to whatever law enforcement can provide to the court and the defendant's attorney can provide.
You're hitting on something that I really wanted to ask you about. How important is the presumption of innocence and the burden of proof?
Well, of course, the presumption of innocence and the burden of proof, the cornerstone of our entire criminal justice system. The burden of proof is always on the government to convince the trier of fact, the jury in most cases, beyond a reasonable doubt of the guilt of the defendant. And the presumption of innocence has been with us since we've been a country. One of the first things they wrote into the Constitution. So it's the bedrock on which the whole system rests. And as you know from your experience, in Jefferson County, roughly 40% of all jury trials end up in not guilty verdicts. And that's not judges deciding they're not guilty. That's jurors, citizens of Jefferson County deciding that the person is not guilty or at least hasn't been proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
One thing people probably don't know, but there's an extraordinary amount of plea bargaining. What is that, and what percentage of people plead guilty?
Probably 98% of the cases are resolved by plea bargaining. I mean, the system couldn't function if you had to try every case, at least not in the state courts with the volume that we do. So usually the lawyer representing the state, the prosecutor, and the defense lawyer negotiate something they both feel like is fair for their respective sides. And then the court, of course, has to accept whatever agreement they reach and take a plea. But this system would collapse without plea bargaining.
A lot of people never get a chance, like they are now, of getting a chance to one-on-one talk to someone like yourself, who've had your experience, who's been a judge for so long in so many cases. I'd like you to tell the ladies and gentlemen, the audience, what is it really like to sit in judgment in the sense of sentencing someone who's been convicted of a crime, or deciding whether or not they get probation, or in other words, what is it that might keep you up at night as a judge?
Well, probably the most difficult part of being a judge, in my opinion, is the sentencing aspect of cases. Because you want to be fair, in some cases, deciding what the appropriate punishment is can be very difficult. And I'm not talking about your heinous crimes and things that are obviously going to require long prison terms or maybe worse. But your everyday run-of-the-mill case where you have to decide, okay, am I going to send this person to prison because that's the most appropriate and least restrictive form of punishment, or am I going to try to tailor something other than prison time to correct the behavior? Kind of like Coach Saban when he talks about changing people's behavior. That's what you want to do. You want to change people's behavior. And sometimes sending to prison doesn't change their behavior, it reinforces the behavior. So particularly low-level offenders who won't really benefit, and neither will society, from being warehoused at $21,000 a year expense to the taxpayer.
And they already have a felony on their record that's going to follow them the rest of their life.
Which makes it very difficult to secure employment, as you know.
Right.
So they've got these strikes against them, and if you send them to prison, you're almost assuring that they're going to reoffend sometimes, rather than changing that behavior.
Well, let me say this. It has been more than an honor for you to be our inaugural guest, our first guest for our first show of Alabama Justice. And I want to thank you on behalf of myself and Michael and the other members of our law firm, and on behalf of the station, for being here with us and sharing your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Richard.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and for being with us. And again, we pledge to you that next week we'll have another exciting guest like Judge Nail, and we'll go into very fascinating topics and explore the criminal justice system in Alabama and other places. Thanks again for being here. Welcome to Alabama Justice Lawyering Up. My name is Richard Jaffe, the senior partner in the Birmingham, Alabama law firm of Jaffe, Hanle, Whisonant, and Knight. We are going to explore with you the hottest cases, the most controversial topics of Alabama justice, and we're going to bring to you exciting key players that make our Alabama justice work or not work. We look forward to having you.